The first time in history, a unanimous pick into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Longtime New York Yankees closer Mariano Rivera voted in on 100% of eligible writers' ballots for enshrinement in Cooperstown in his first year of eligibility. The all-time MLB saves leader will be joined by the late Roy Halladay, the two-time Cy Young winner elected in posthumously by over 85% of writers. Longtime Seattle Mariners designated hitter Edgar Martinez also makes the 2019 class, and former Yankees and Baltimore Orioles pitcher Mike Mussina makes it to the Hall of Fame with 76.7% of votes, just getting over the 75% needed for enshrinement. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Are you waiting too long for a home loan decision? Are you looking for a bank that understands your needs and can close your loan quickly at today's super low rates? Then come no further than Bank Pacific. Our home loan specialists are friends and neighbors from your community, and our decisions are made right here in Hagåtña. Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply. Viva Bank Pacific.
Cheers to 80 years. It's our 80th anniversary and the gifts are on us. 80 gift certificates, 8 shopping sprees, 8 staycations, and 1 round-trip flyaway for 2 to Manila. So how do you enter? Calvo's Insurance personal home and auto customers are automatically entered. Non-Calvo's customers may enter by receiving a qualified quote. It's our way of saying thank you for trusting us for the past 80 years. For more details, visit calvos.com/giveaway or call 472-6816. Calvo's Insurance, serving Guam for 80 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. As we get started on today's edition of Tall Tales, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I just enjoyed the Rush Limbaugh show, and here we are now for the next 2 hours. Live in studio here in Upper Tumon with Tall Tales. Bob Klitzkie returns in 43 days. Okay? He will return to this seat. So the show for Wednesday, January 23rd. Want to start right off with this Second Amendment comment because this is how you know where this program's head is at, to put it the way that Bob does. And he had mentioned to me over email that I might want to check out a website and take a look at some articles. And so I do have one to start today's show. And I also did mention that I'm going to be applying for a gun permit. And when that happens, I will bring it to you during this segment of the program as well. From a website called Bearing Arms. This was posted today. The headline is, City Councilman, screw the law, we're on the right side of history. And so this is a story about a Pittsburgh city councilman who thinks it's just fine for the city to ignore the state of Pennsylvania's preemption laws because he's on the right side of history. What would happen if you or I were to go out and decide that we were going to build full auto firearms and hand them to anyone we wanted? We all know what would happen. We'd be arrested and charged with committing several crimes. Now, what if we told the court that it was okay because we were really on the right side of history? Do you think that would make any difference at all? Probably not. Yet a Pittsburgh city councilman thinks it's just fine for his city to ignore state preemption laws for just that reason. As you recall, Pittsburgh has been looking to pass their own gun control laws despite the state's preemption measure that bars communities from making their own gun control laws. Even their own district attorney warned them that it would be illegal. City Councilman Corey O'Connor, however, says that it doesn't matter. His reason? Typical leftist claptrap. And so this is a quote. Let's see, there's a back and forth here. I don't know who Hayes Freeland is. They don't say, but the article continues. So, final question, Corey O'Connor, representative from City Council. You got this letter. You got it last week. Surprised you that it popped up on social media today, but the bottom line for you is you're going to keep pushing towards the proposed legislation. And O'Connor responds, yeah, you know, we believe we're on the right side of history. We believe we're doing what's right for our city, but we think this is what's right across the country. And nobody's going to stop us from doing that. And we're going to get, hopefully, our votes from City Council to pass this bill and move forward from there. In other words, O'Connor is giving the middle finger to the law just because they're on, quote, the right side of history, which is just really a way to try and bully people into supporting legislation and ideas that they can't give a good logical reason to support. They're playing on the fear that someday your legacy will be one of obstructing something good and noble, and you just don't want that. The problem is that history doesn't work that way. The view of right side and wrong side is as much a matter of perspective then as it is now, and it's impossible to know how that will shake out. Our own founding fathers, for example, are people who built this nation, who booted out a tyrant and created a new country out of nothing. Now they're being attacked and purged because of things that weren't all that controversial at the time. What makes O'Connor think this is the, quote, right side of history? More importantly, though, what makes him believe that breaking the law is how to get on the right side of history? The truth of the matter is that the only reason this is happening is because O'Connor and his fellow travelers won't be punished for their role in this nonsense. They can do this with impunity because there won't be any repercussions on them for it. While O'Connor is convinced that he's on, quote, the right side of history, though the author of this article says, I'm firmly convinced that it won't matter. There's no way this law survives legal challenge, and it will face legal challenge. The only problem is that O'Connor won't end up in prison for breaking this law, and that is the real crime. Well, there are laws. And the supreme law, really, in the matter of guns is the Second Amendment that we start this program with. And when I do go down to the ITC building and make my application, I will come back and provide you with the perspectives on the laws concerning guns on Guam and what it takes to get to be a lawful possessor and carrier of a gun. And so that's how we got our show started. And so thank you very much. Let's see. I see we already have folks logging into our Facebook page and making some comments, and we're really happy to have you with us, whether you're online or on air. I do aim to please. You can call 888-8255. If you've got something on your mind that you'd like to share with the public here on Tall Tales, please do. 888-8255. And I'm going to mention once again about Jerry Roberts' article called The Work Zone, his regular column in yesterday's Guam Post. And it was entitled, Bad Leaders Can Make Us Better Leaders. Maybe I'll read this to you sometime, or maybe later in today's show if we have some time. But it's a great article, and it's a good time to read this because it really has much to do with how we have gone through an election to choose leaders and then what we expect of our leaders. And what we can do with our perspective on leadership in real time as we go through life. In Zami Ikatni today, we have two articles, two editorials. Thank you. That's right. We've got a PDN editorial is Enforce Immigration Law Instead of Banning Philippine Workers. And the Post's editorial is Gita Acting Administrator's Response to Travel and Spending Questions Puzzling. And so let us dive right into this. Interesting reads these were, and we'll see which one deserves our blue star. Pen is ready. Let's start with the Post, because it's a bit shorter. I don't have to there's not so much other material I need to refer to. Okay. Gita Acting Administrator's Response to Travel, Spending Questions Puzzling. Just a few weeks into her job, the acting administrator of the Guam Economic Development Authority said something puzzling last week in response to Senator Regine Biscoe-Lee's concerns. Biscoe-Lee questioned Gita's travel expenses and the agency spending more money than the amount it generated in operating revenues. It's no surprise that these questions have popped up. Let me just stop us right here. The questions could have popped up any time earlier. What I'm surprised about is why Senator Biscoe-Lee only popped up with them in the third week of January of 2019, when for the last 2 years she was the chair of the committee that had oversight on Gita. Kind of late to ask. Kind of late. And the Post doesn't seem to pick this up at all. It's really easy to find out where was Senator Biscoe-Lee 6 months ago or a year ago. But Melanie Mendiola, the new appointee, the acting administrator, told the Guam Daily Post the senator's question about the operating deficit, quote, may be a misunderstanding about how Gita gets its revenue, end quote. And I'm quoting again, Ms. Mendiola said, like any other business, we have years that are positive and years that are negative. Mendiola previously said, Gita gets no money from the government of Guam General Fund, she added. The editorial continues, we hope Mendiola made these comments out of unfamiliarity with her role as a public official in charge of public funds and getting paid with public funds. And we hope that this is just her talking before going through an ethics seminar for those managers, administrators, and elected officials who earn their paychecks on the public bank accounts. Now, I'm going to go back to this in a moment. The editorial continues, Gita is not a private enterprise, so the confusion, not on the senator's part but on Mendiola's, is surprising. Gita is a public corporation, and the money Gita spends is public money. Questions about how Gita spends public money, especially when it's been spending more public funds than it could generate in operating revenues, are valid, whether they're being raised by a senator, the average taxpayer, or by any member of the public. The money Gita spends includes revenues from leases on government lands and industrial zones such as the E.T. Calvo Memorial Park and the Harmon Industrial Park. Gita has also made money managing Guam Ancestral Lands Commission leases over the past decade. It has received federal grants and has spent the financial management and processing fees it collects from government agencies and entities that have borrowed or refinanced debt owed to bond investors. It has received and spent corporate financial contributions in exchange for tax breaks. In fiscal year 2017, Gita's operating revenues were at $2.6 million, but it spent $2.9 million in salaries and benefits, with its personnel cost rising 1%. Gita's travel expenses over the past 2 audited budget years have cost roughly $215,000, $123,000 in 2016 and $92,000 in 2017. A 3-day trip to Singapore for a hotel investment conference in March 2017 included a side trip to the Philippines for 2 days to meet with a business organization, visit a Guam Visitors Bureau Philippine office, and meet a pharmaceutical company that doesn't have firm plans to invest in Guam. In April 2017, Gita's representative spent 5 days at a Pacific Business Summit in China, went to Korea and Japan for trade missions for 8 days in September 2017, and went on a Taiwan trade mission for 7 days in October 2017. There's no doubt that some of these travels are needed as part of Gita's job to help promote economic development. But the details are also subject to question. Did the officials travel as high flyers in business class on the government's tab? Did they have to spend so many days on each trip? Was the number of delegates traveling on public funds justified? These questions aren't raised out of confusion. They are meant to seek accountability. So unless Mendiola and other Gita officials spend money out of their own pockets, how they spend Gita funds is open to questions from the public any day. I find this article really superficial. I mean, from the beginning, I mentioned that they didn't even check to see where Senator Biscoe Lee was sitting in relation to Gita when these funds were being spent and when they're being questioned, which is now, questioned now, but she had the power to question him then. She's not the chair of the committee anymore. It's now Senator Clint Rigel. But it sounds like Senator Biscoe Lee is giving Senator Rigel a loading up his inbox with controversy that she herself avoided at the time. Gita gets no money from the government of Guam General Fund. She added, well, those are not appropriated funds. Gita has been authorized in enabling legislation like Guam Housing Corporation, even the appropriations even GMH. They collect funds, and it doesn't depend on a legislative appropriation to operate. No, GMH does. But the funds, the revolving funds, are available for use, and the Gita was set up this way. And so yes, the funds are public, but the autonomy that was given to the agency was, it's in their enabling legislation. So the Post shouldn't be surprised at this. Now, when they say the questions about how Gita spends public money are valid, yes, they are. But is the Post asking any questions, or are they just raising a rhetorical question? Are they going to do investigative reporting? Because these questions can be asked and answered in the context of a story, of a news story. When it's raised in the context of an editorial, it's rhetorical if they don't even bother following up with an in-depth study of how did Gita spend its money over the last 2 years. But the one who really knows how Gita spent their money over the last 2 years is the chair of the Oversight Committee at the legislature, whose responsibility it was and who was budgeted to keep an eye on those agencies under her purview. And if there was something to question, raise the question as a representative of us, the people. That's what the legislature's role is. Again, this escapes the editorial writer here. The trips that were cited, I remember reading about these trips, hearing about 3-day trip to Singapore, 5 days at a business summit in China, Korea and Japan for trade missions for 8 days. We all heard about these. But were these questioned at the time by senators or by the press or the public? Was there anybody inside Gita saying, there's something wrong here? And one more thing I need to mention is even though they overspent, their salaries only went up by 1% from one year to the next. The overall salary grab from all those different sources of income. And the salaries are 10 times the amount of the travel budget. So they're not really, it's not really very, very deep, is it? They're looking at questioning travel, but they're not questioning the staffing of Gita. So I'm just wondering, with what this editorial leads me to ask is whether the Guam Post, the Guam Daily Post, is sufficiently curious to investigate this. Is this just rhetorical, or are they actually going to do something as a medium to find out the answer for itself to these questions? Is Senator Biscoe Lee going to get the answers that she should have already had? So I'm really not very impressed by the Post editorial today. Really, really not. They just, I think that there should be more depth to this. But PDN's not, I didn't save the best for last. The PDN's editorial is, I'm going to just preface it by a word, daft. The Pacific Daily News editorial today is entitled, Enforce Immigration Law Instead of Banning Philippine Workers. Because of the federal government's failure to properly manage and enforce the United States immigration laws and policies, it has decided to ban for 1 year Philippine workers from the H-2A and H-2B programs. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said workers from the Philippines can no longer use the programs to seek jobs across the United States. The agency stated the Philippines has a high H-2B overstay rate and a large number of victims of human trafficking. It estimates that nearly 40% of H-2B workers, H-2B visa holders from the Philippines overstayed their period of authorized stay in the United States. Instead, the U.S. Embassy Manila issued about 40% of the total T-derivative visas issued worldwide for fiscal 2014 to 2016. And here's a quote from Homeland Security. A recent review of certain T1 status recipients whose spouses were issued T2 visas during this same period shows that approximately 60% were determined to have been trafficked to the United States on H-2B visas. The agency also, quote, believe that these overstay and human trafficking concerns are severe enough to warrant removal from the H-2A program. Now, just to clarify, H-2A is agricultural workers, and H-2B are all other non-agricultural workers, nurses, construction workers, engineers, different professions. The editorial continues. Because of a limited labor pool, Guam for decades has been forced to rely on immigrant workers from the Philippines. They've made up the vast majority of cement masons, carpenters, iron workers, heavy equipment operators, electricians, and other fields of the trades industry. Governor Luliang Guerrero said the policy is a burden to Guam and its construction industry. A near total ban on immigrant construction workers has caused delays and increases in costs for federal and local projects and has driven up housing prices, which the governor correctly characterized as an ongoing crisis. While President Donald Trump has shut down the federal government to address what he says is an immigration problem at the U.S.-Mexico border, it's clear his administration fails to properly enforce legal immigration laws and policies. Rather than banning H-2B workers from specific countries, Trump and his administration need to address the problems that are causing the system to be abused. That's an editorial? Those of you who know me know I have no love for Donald Trump. I don't go around kicking his effigy in the shins all day, and I'm really not even inclined to say much bad about him right here. But this editorial from the PDN today is simply daft. I'm going to show you something that I mentioned this yesterday, and I didn't. I have not found the source document. What I found was the renewal of the list of the allowed countries, which includes the Philippines, on the document. Is it time for a break already, Real Joe? Well, let's go ahead and do that before I break out the other paperwork. But I tell you, this is a very interesting topic, and it got us some discussion yesterday. You're welcome to call. And right after this break, we'll go ahead and continue talking about this ban on Philippine workers in the United States.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
John Gibson, digging up history. If it were not for two friends who gathered up lost copies of all his works, the plays and sonnets of this famous playwright would have been lost forever. That story after this. Let's talk heirloom sheets and towels from Redland Cotton in Alabama. First, the family farm, growing the finest cotton in the world. The spinning, the looming, every step made in America, right down to the cutting and sewing. Sheets designed from a long-lost 1920s weave. The softest, most comfortable, longest-lasting sheets you've ever slept on. The Redland family, dedicated to America and linens you'll treasure. Check out redlandcotton.com for America's linen. redlandcotton.com. In his time, he was considered an ordinary playwright. His two friends acted in his plays. Watch him develop some of the most famous dramas and comedies in the English language. But the plays and the sonnets were never really published. There were copies the actors used, which they dropped in the trash when the theater moved on to another production. But when the playwright died, his two friends searched out copies of all the plays, convinced another playwright to edit them, and they were all issued in printed copies 7 years after the great man's death. Weirdly, the works of this most famous of all playwrights were never in print until then. We're talking about the works of the bard himself, William Shakespeare. I'm John Gibson, digging up history.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
Yes, indeed. I am here for Bob Klitzkie, who will be back in 43 days. Keep you company for the next weekdays for the next 43 days here on Tall Tales. Thanks for tuning in. And let's continue with this ban on Philippine H-2 workers coming in the United States. In the editorial, PDN's editorial today, they gave the reason why. Because Homeland Security estimates that nearly 40% of H-2 visa holders from the Philippines overstayed their period of authorized stay in the United States. 40%. As far as I'm concerned, they were bending over backwards not to delist them earlier. And if you needed to go anywhere to find out just how much the United States has bent over backwards. First off, there was a lot of warning, wasn't it? How long has it been since Homeland Security has not approved any H-2 workers for Guam? It's been about a year and a half. Don't you think that somebody might have gotten taken the hint? And here on Guam, The certification for H-2 workers is at our own Guam Department of Labor. Now, I've been in and out of this government for years, and the Guam Department of Labor, while it should be working for the people of Guam, has been pretty much a rubber stamp for the applicants, the companies that want to bring in the workers. Whether the workers is fraud in the worker applications is the responsibility of the companies that hire them and need to send them back at the end of their contracts. Since those same companies have been doing things like charging them for their room and board, putting them in barracks and charging them. Also, the contracts that they pay for placement fees, which are not legal. Let me take a look at something here. I was going online to find the announcement for this year's denial, removal of the Philippines from the list. But apparently, because of the shutdown, Federal Register is not very user-friendly. Yes, the word went out, but I can't seem to find it online. But let me go back to January of last year. And this is a CNN story about Federal Register removed Haiti from a list of countries eligible for H-2 visas. And it goes on, says roughly 80 countries are eligible for temporary worker programs, and the list is published every year. While it's unusual, countries are removed from the list at times. Haiti is being removed along with Belize and Samoa. And it talks a bit about how the Haitians that were allowed to come to the United States after the earthquake, this was a story a year ago, and that's why this sort of escaped us, because it was sort of wrapped together with a couple of things that Donald Trump had mentioned, S-hole countries. Why are those people from the S-hole countries, why are we letting them in? And Haiti being one of them. So it's part of this article too, but we'll skip over that part. But let's go down to the work, the enforcement of the law in this matter. The CNN article continues. In its notice, Department of Homeland Security justifies the decision for each country. Belize is being excluded because it is included by the United States on the list of countries that do not meet standards on human trafficking and are not making efforts to do so. Samoa was removed because it does not take back its deported nationals from the United States, an issue referred to as recalcitrant countries. Haiti's justification, though, cites, quote, extremely high rates of refusal, quote, high levels of fraud and abuse, and a high rate of overstaying their visas when they end. It did not provide any statistics or further evidence. And then, quote, Haiti has shown no improvement in these areas, and the Secretary of Homeland Security has determined, with the concurrence of the Secretary of State, that Haiti's inclusion on the 2018 H-2A and H-2B lists is no longer in the U.S. interest. Then, CNN, in its own research, continues the article. Haiti does have a high rate of visa overstays, where immigrants continue to live in the U.S. illegally beyond their work authorization, according to the most recent entry-exit overstay report from the Department of Homeland Security. The country's nationals had a suspected overstay rate of just over 39% out of roughly 1,500 immigrants in 2016 in the temporary worker category. That rate is higher than other countries on the list of acceptable H-2 countries, though others have high rates as well, including Guatemala at over 28%, the Philippines at nearly 29%, Ethiopia at nearly 20%, and Papua New Guinea at 20%. Other countries with higher rates were already not on the approved list. Now, this was a year ago. And in the past year, the rate calculated for 2017 for the Philippines was 40%. And this is after they had already stopped approving for Guam. Is this like a surprise to anyone? And it happens to be enforcing the law. We have a very clear law, and the law is the same for everyone who has applied for immigrant visas or non-immigrant visas. The law's been clear. The same people and the same offices in the Philippines reviewing applicants. And there are so many applicants, and there is so much fraud, and there's a very high rejection rate. And even at that, for the last 5-6 decades, we've still had a construction industry on Guam that has been largely staffed by H-2B workers from the Philippines. We have H-2B nurses at our hospital. And for the work that they do when they are here, we here on Guam enjoy the benefits of lower cost of construction, lower cost of health care. And perhaps because we have them here, we have a construction industry and we have health care. So it's not the fault of the people who are coming in. It is the fault of the people who are coming in who don't follow the law that gives the nation, the Philippines source nation, a bad name. I also saw in my travels through the internet that the country of Qatar just signed an agreement with the Philippines to admit 77,000 new Philippine skilled workers for construction and all sorts of industries, occupations. 77,000 more Philippine skilled workers are to be admitted to Qatar in the coming year. The United States is saying, sorry, we can't live with this kind of fraud rate. And so that is where we are. And so we have a caller on line 1. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But first, I need to say that neither PDN's editorial or the Guam Daily Post editorial today rise to the level of what I would say is an acceptable, minimum acceptable editorial expression. You may as well have just brought something in from USA Today and said, this is what we think. It doesn't tell us anything, and in fact, it's something of an insult since it doesn't even stay on its own track. So, I wish it was otherwise. I wish that we didn't have chronic fraud. I'll show you something. This is my sports bottle. You know how you carry a water bottle around? This is the one I've been using on my bicycle and around town ever since I found it some years back. Let me hold it up to the camera. You see it says Department of Justice, Immigration and Naturalization Service. And the top of it is detention and removals. Now I was concerned that I might offend somebody whose grandmother was just snatched by the INS and removed because she overstayed her visa, or workers on projects where I was working, reluctant to go back, and so they were trying to figure out a way to overstay. I think people should follow the law. You go back, and then you reapply, and you say, I followed the law the last time, I'd like to come back in again. That's how things are done right. Let's go to line 1 and see how we're doing. Thank you very much for calling in. Hello? Line 1?
Hello.
Yes.
Is this the point? Is this the point?
This is the point. Is this Tom?
Yes, this is Tom.
Hey, Tom. How are you?
All right, buddy. How are you doing?
It beats sitting home watching TV, I tell you. I'm happy here. And I could be sitting home listening to Bob Klitzkie, but that wasn't going to happen. So I may as well be here holding court.
Anyway, I'd like to make a comment about the H-2B workers from the Philippines.
Please.
What I don't understand is why is our Department of Labor down there in Agana, why aren't they monitoring our construction companies that have been bringing in H-2B workers? Why aren't they being monitored to make sure that they don't overstay their visas to begin with? We should not have any overstaying at all, because this is what happens. When overstays are allowed to happen, this is what happened. Department of Security, Homeland Security, I don't blame them for denying now, because we have 29% for the Philippines now.
No, actually, it's closer. 40% in 2017 was the figure that was cited. It's inside the editorial. That was the one. The 29% was from a year ago. A year ago, the announcement was that the Philippines had 29%, and it was 39% for Haiti, and they were delisted a year ago. And it was 40% this year. Well, it shouldn't be a surprise unless you're really, really drawing salary and not doing your job, and you're not paying attention.
Yeah, because Homeland Security is really cracking down on the Homeland Security issues. They're really cracking down, so we really should not have been having any overstays anyway to begin with. But now that it has already happened, the Philippines has now been removed out of the allowed nations, right? Now it's our job now to go straight to Washington. Our new governor now has a liaison, which is Bordalio, to the president, and then we have a new delegate. Let both of those people go straight to the administration and go straight to Homeland Security and ask for another chance. And let's give them a promise that if you give us another chance, we will not have any more overstays.
Well, let me ask you, this is how the editorial ends. I'm going to read this again. Rather than banning H-2B workers from specific countries, Trump and his administration need to address the problems that are causing the system to be abused. The overstaying rate is based on the individual workers not exiting the country before the date stamped inside their passport. And they are notified in advance how long they have to stay, and then when they have to go back, whether it's 2 years or it's at the end of the project. And that's already, the company that's hiring them has already stated that. And the Guam Department of Labor has already certified that. So for us, there should be a tickler file. You know, the Director of Labor should have a tickler file and should say, okay, you fellow down here on the next floor, I see that we have 5 companies that are coming up to the end of their projects. Go visit them and find out where their workers are and what arrangements have been made to either extend, put the applications in to extend for good cause, or produce their workers back to the immigration checkpoint before their visas expire, because our good name is at risk.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about from the beginning.
But it's not going to do any good to send Guam officials to ask the federal officials for another chance, because the Guam officials besides just simply not doing their job, they didn't overstay. The Guam officials are not making the workers overstay. The workers are overstaying, and their employers are keeping them here and not reporting them as overstays. And so this is an individual problem there's a statistic because of the numbers. It rises to the point of of large double-digit numbers of fraud. Now, there's 80 other countries that we could be pulling workers from with the same kinds of skills. So why don't we just shift over to another country and bring in people from those countries? Japan has a population problem. It's importing workers. So we don't get workers from Japan. Except now perhaps for Okinawa. From Okinawa for the bases, for the base operations, maybe they'll allow Japanese citizens from Okinawa to come in and do some of the jobs like the workers that were brought in to do some of the work for our tourism industry or for the hospital. But you take a look at...
We also got to consider the cost, right? Maybe the workers from the Philippines are the cheapest. That's why we've been getting them from the Philippines.
Could be. And that's something to consider. Did you want to hang on, Tom, or do you want to call me again? Yeah, we're up to a break here at 10 minutes before the hour, and so did you want to hang on, or did you want to...
I'll let other people chime in.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tom, for your call. Okay. Bye-bye. Okay, let's go ahead and take a break here and come back with more Tall Tales.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,500 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 475-4545, Upper Tuon 647-5626, or in Dedito 633-4473. Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Are you not getting paid what you're worth? Or not reaching your full potential at your job? If you're pioneering, adventurous, competitive, love talking to people, and want to earn $100,000 per year, sell cars on U.S. military bases with Military Auto Source. Start on Guam, stay on Guam, or move to Japan or Korea. To see if you qualify, visit MASEastasiarecruiting.com. Military Auto Source, helping you reach your full potential.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back. This is Tall Tales. And have I told any tall tales yet? Have I, Real Joe, am I telling tales?
Depends on who's listening.
Well, I guess maybe some people think that I'm pulling this stuff out of my rear, but no, actually, I try to not do that. And there are a couple times I've been tempted, but just thinking about how Bob runs this program, I am going to respect that and see if I can't live up to the standards that he's set here on Tall Tales. But he's got much more humor in him, and I miss him. But maybe I'll develop a sense of humor about this stuff and start telling jokes about the or displaying some wit about the situations we find ourselves in. But I think it's a very, very good idea to take a look at the editorials that seek to shape the way that we think about the issues of the day that are in print, because in print, once it's printed, it has a life of its own. It can be referred to years and years later. When Joe Murphy was the editor of the Guam Daily News and had his column Pipe Dreams, I collected those. Because whether he was on target or not, it represented a way of thinking about and interpreting the news of the day in a way that shaped the way that the people of Guam saw themselves, because it was in print and it was written by a person in authority. Now, talk radio, we're talking here. So we have a responsibility to be responsible and to not throw lots of innuendo out and carve very sharply into the character of people that we don't agree with. And so if I'm being a bit hard on somebody, it's because they deserve it. And if they were sitting right here, I'd tell it to their face. And that's just, you know, what needs to be done around here. I don't mean to be mean, and I don't think anyone should be mean or to disparage anyone's character. You know, I don't care what a senator does after hours. But when they make decisions on how to spend their staff money and they're not getting full value for the hundreds of thousands of dollars they get to spend on offices and equipment and staff and travel, if they're not getting full value for us for their committee assignments, then we're losing. We're the losers. We just elected an aristocrat. We didn't elect a representative. We just bestowed an aristocratic title on somebody that comes with salary and the trappings of court. And I think we need to get off that train. The sooner the better. And now that we have a new legislature, this is where we should be, we the public, should be paying attention. And we have about 5 minutes here. Somebody else want to call in and get a small comment in before the top of the hour? Please do, 888-8255. Yesterday, had a really good comment. We were talking about H2 workers. There was a woman who called in who wanted to get a word in edgewise about VOCTEC and the effort for trades. And we're going to hit this really hard after the halftime show. I want to go back to that, and it'll be on the value of education and some things to think about as far as education. And it comes up with the H2 workers, because we should see any worker, any job that we have to bring a worker in as a potential job for one of our sons, daughters, graduates, immigrants, to be trained and placed in. That's our responsibility. That's something we can do. We have the educational facilities. We have the Department of Labor. We have private sector, the Trades Academy. We have on-the-job training by employers who have an interest in cultivating and developing local labor. We also have minimum wage and prevailing wage rates that we can affect through policy. And all these are tools. We also have a philosophy of education. You know, what are these agencies really supposed to be doing? We have a mission statement, and we have laws about how our educational system is supposed to work. And we have a budget that's approved every year for something. Let's see, we do have a call. We have just a few minutes left, but let's go ahead and go to, no, it dropped out. Okay, I saw the light. That's okay. Maybe that caller will call back. And we'll get into this after the break. Just let's go back to some of the editorials that I'll just briefly mention. There was an editorial on Sunday the 20th in the Guam Daily Post for the Sunday Post. Guam needs one-stop Veterans Center. And I just don't understand this. There isn't one agency that's funding the Veterans Center. And there are a number of centers for veterans because of the variety of needs, legitimate needs that they have for medical, mental, document processing, that no one place has the expertise to do. And they're not funded from the same sources. So why would we have one-stop center? I just don't get it. So what I do get is that we have here a great show that gives you the opportunity to call in and lend the public your perspectives on the issues of the day. So please do make plans to call us after the halftime break. We've got about a 5-7 minute break here, and when we come back, we'll be looking for your phone call, and we'll be taking a look at who's online so far this afternoon here on Tall Tales.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 1350 AM, 93.3 FM, and 104.3 HD3.
Senate shutdown votes are planned. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The Senate will vote Thursday on the president's compromise plan to end the government shutdown.
It needs 60 votes to be advanced, and despite Republicans only holding a 53-seat majority, Wyoming GOP Senator John Barrasso says he's optimistic the plan could win over some Democrats. He tells Fox News at Night,
"We know there's some cracks in the armor on the House side. There are a number of Democrats that are saying, give the president the money, open the government."
But Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says the president's compromise plan was, quote, designed to fail. If that happens, the Senate will then take up the Democrats' plan, although there's no guarantee the president will sign it.
Fox's Sean Lanchel in Washington. Despite House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's request for a delay until after the shutdown ends, the White House says it's moving forward with plans for the president to give the State of the Union address next Tuesday to a joint session of Congress. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders.
Nancy Pelosi offered us, I made the invitation to the president on the State of the Union. He accepted. She cited security concerns as a potential reason to delay it. Those concerns were addressed by the Department of Homeland Security, the United States Secret Service. At this point, we're moving forward.
The House and Senate must pass a joint resolution for the president to speak in the House chamber, usually perfunctory, but as Fox's Kristen Fisher reports, maybe not this year.
If Speaker Pelosi were to move forward and refuse to allow President Trump to deliver the State of the Union address from the House floor, and she does have the power to do that, that would be truly unprecedented. According to Fox's research department, they were not able to find a single case of that happening ever in U.S. history.
Longtime host of Masterpiece Theater, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, humorist, and former New York Times columnist Russell Baker has died. He was 93 years old. This is Fox News.
Docomo Pacific is making the Better Together bundle even better. 2 great services plus more. Get unlimited local calls, SMS, and 20 gigs of data, plus unlimited home internet for $109 a month. Sign up today and get free installation and choose between a free Galaxy S8, S8 Plus, or $100 off select devices. Mobile plus online from Docomo Pacific. Better together. Some conditions apply. See store for details.
Are you shopping for a home loan with a low rate and a fast closing? Because that's what you get with a Bank Pacific My Home Loan. All of our loan decisions are made here by people who understand our island. So whether you're buying or building a home or looking to refinance your existing home loan to a lower rate, come see us at Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply. Viva Bank Pacific.
Leaders in the U.S. intelligence community calling for a major upgrade in national security.
The nation's top spy, Director of National Intelligence Dan Coates, writes that the intelligence agencies have to become much more agile, more innovative, and more creative to address emerging threats. The National Intelligence Strategy is a roadmap for the 17 intelligence agencies and lays the groundwork for the annual worldwide threat hearings, which are public and expected next month on Capitol Hill. In Washington, Catherine Herridge, Fox News.
Teachers in Los Angeles like what they see in the tentative contract agreement worked out with the L.A. School District early on Tuesday.
A vast supermajority are voting yes for the agreement that we made with LAUSD, therefore ending the strike.
That's Alex Caputo Pearl, who's the teachers union president. He says teachers will be back on their jobs in the morning. The new deal calls for a 6% pay raise, smaller classes, and additional support staff. 93% of the teachers in Denver's public school system have voted to strike that district as early as next Monday. They're asking for 10 to 12% pay raises. 4 people charged in a plot to attack a Muslim community in New York State.
No one knows what it means, but it's...
The Baseball Writers of America have selected 4 new members for the Baseball Hall of Fame to be inducted this July, including longtime Seattle Mariners designated hitter Edgar Martinez, pitcher Mike Mussina, who pitched for the Orioles and the Yankees. Mariano Rivera, the longtime reliever for the New York Yankees, becomes the first player to be elected unanimously by the baseball writers. They will join the late pitcher Roy Halladay, who was killed in a 2017 plane crash, and will be enshrined posthumously when all 4 enter the Hall of Fame July 21st in Cooperstown. A down day on Wall Street, the Dow dropping 301 points, NASDAQ off more than 136. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for our all-new Ultimate Cheesy Garlic Bread. How would you like it?
I'll take a skeptical grandma.
Set in her ways?
A smidge.
Grandma, try this Ultimate Meatball Marinara made with Ultimate Cheesy Garlic Bread. Melted mozzarella, Parmesan, garlic butter spread. It's just like yours.
Like mine? My grandmother's recipe?
Try it.
You know, my grandmother's cheesy garlic bread was never all that.
Subway, make it what you want. Limited time only at participating restaurants.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
All right, and we are back. Welcome back after that great halftime show. The halftime show with the flag waving and the baton twirling and the cannons and the marching band. We have that, and we have great Fox News right in the middle of this program, and keeping you informed what's going on in the metropolitan center of our country. And welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm just looking up Public Law 28-45. I wonder if Senator Klitzkie has mentioned 28-45. Real Joe? Has he?
What's that law regarding?
Every child deserves an adequate education.
He's mentioned it many times.
Yes, he should, because he's the author of it. And we're going to be talking about that just tangentially, but I want to make sure I've got my copy front and center. And this was from back in, let's see, 2005. 13th of June, 2005. And I'll go ahead and, since I've got this up, I want to download this, and we will talk about this at some point. And yeah, okay. Oh, actually, while that's downloading, and before I jump into the topic, I've got a caller on line 1, and that's a great thing. Line 1, thank you very much for calling in to Tall Tales this afternoon.
Yeah, hi. I heard you earlier talking about Voctec.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, when I first came to Guam some 50 years ago, Voctec was in business and doing a great job of developing young people for work in offices and trades, and it was a great program. And it's unfortunate that we moved out of it, and now it seems to be the only thing you can do is want to go to college, and that necessarily is not the best outcome for everyone. So if you can push the Voc Tech track, please do it.
Well, thank you very much. In fact, that has been that's been discussed ever since the time it happened. And the success of Guam Community College is not necessarily the success of the community as a whole or of the workforce. And you see it. You've seen it over the last 50 years. I've seen it. And it doesn't take anything away from Mary Okada, but institutional, the health of an institution is not necessarily the same as the health of a community. And in education.
I think GCC it does a fine job of what it does, but it's lost sense of the need to develop job skills in trades, electricity, plumbing, carpentry, that sort of thing. That's what the community needs.
At some point, the GCC decided that it would go into fields such as culinary and culinary arts, and they've succeeded at that very well. And
yes, indeed.
It's good because they've been concentrating on the tourism industry and retail industry, but that doesn't mean that they really needed to ignore the construction trades. And with Guam Trades Academy starting up and working a very good program there, we could have more of a spectrum of vocational education offerings for our youth and for anyone who wants to retool and start a new career in their 30s or 40s. There's nothing to prevent older workers from changing careers completely or starting a new career at a later time in their life. Even prison industries. It just doesn't, it's not happening.
I say amen to what you said, because in my case, you're preaching to the choir, and what we need are training in trades that will let young people move into the construction industry. So thank you for promoting that idea.
Well, thank you for the call, and thank you for supporting this idea, because we are, that's why we're here at Talk Radio and also on Tall Tales, to be sure that we can share these ideas. Thank you very much for your call.
Sure. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Yeah, I'm going to get into this in a few moments, but this is the discussion that was started yesterday by a caller just like him, who said, don't forget Voc Tech. And no, I haven't forgotten Voc Tech, but apparently some people have. People who have been paid, and in their mission, it's very close to what it is that they themselves are saying that they're going to do. And that would be both GCC and the charter schools. Because there's nothing that prevents anybody from working on this, the people who are already in the field, from doing this. Even the Department of Education could be doing this. They could be sitting down together. Wasn't there an editorial over the past week or so, Real Joe, about, oh, I know what it was. It was a column. It was a column by Ron McNitch saying that the Joint Education Board was no longer needed and it should be taken off the books. Well, maybe it shouldn't meet only twice a year, because maybe they would get together and try to rationalize the entire education industry on Guam, make sense of it, and then help explain it to the rest of us, instead of doing it just the UOG strategy and just the DOE strategy and just the GCC strategy and just by itself the Guam Trades Academy strategy, without overlap. I had some experience at this when I was at PBS Guam. I wanted to sort of meld together with GW High School and have our cameramen and editors and producer oversee students coming in to use our equipment and our studios to produce on professional broadcast quality equipment and facilities for whatever creative projects they wanted to work on. But DOE couldn't handle it because we didn't have what was called a strategic plan. And there was no interest in developing a strategic plan because I didn't know if it was included in their plan or not, but they weren't actually very facilitative. And that was a disappointment to me, that we couldn't agree on something as simple as that, as shared facilities, when we were actually on our, PBS Guam is on the campus of George Washington High School, but walled off, fenced off. We go opposite directions when we come out the door. Just nonsense. And that at the same time as we have Guam International Film Festival, and a large number of people who are doing production on their own with iPhones and home computers. Oh well. Before I go into this, let's go ahead and take a look at who's online and wishing us well this afternoon. All right. Got it.
Welcome back.
Okay. You know, back at the very beginning of the show, Jack Haddock signed in, and he said, Tall Tales players are checking in. And then Diana Rose says, Hafaday Guam from Washington with love. And not quite sure which Washington that is, but happy to have you with us. Hope you're warm, because both Washingtons are cold right now. And Jack Haddock adds, Hafaday Guam and Hafaday Coach D. I'm curious, Jack, whether you are calling from the office or whether you're still cooling your heels out on the couch where Pika Farron told you to have a seat until she calls you. Ishmael Velez is saying hi with a really cool emoji there. And Tom Van Eggen says, hi, Daryl, and Real Joe Cruz. Our fan base is growing here. Lee Stali says, well, he shows the hand, waving. Jose Martinez wishes us a great show. And Max Ronquillo is watching. And Daryl Slater is there. I remember going to Daryl Slater's wedding up in Saipan some years ago. He was a friend of my brother, my late brother. Nate Horn says, we have the apprentice program, but a lot of people don't want to commit the 2 to 4 years, like school. Well, you know, in some areas it's called investment. You know, the years that our children spend in school is an investment in their future. And we're going to get into this in a little bit. And if some people don't want to spend the time, how about the time spent in college instead of working and having fun or making babies or something? You know, these are life choices, and people, our youth and our people, should be ready to make them when and for the right reasons. Albert Eliason is waving, and Ken Leon Guerrero is with us. So thank you very much. And let's see, over here, I'm looking at 2 different screens because I don't have all of the comments on one. And Dave Duenas is suggesting, he said, Daryl, you being the former PBS Guam general manager, tell your international radio listening audience that no matter what political party you are affiliated with, you can volunteer your services to PBS Guam. Well, I can say it, but it doesn't matter what political party you're with as far as PBS Guam, as long as you're not doing using the PBS Guam for political purposes. And whether the volunteers are accepted really is up to the general manager. So now Ina Carrillo is up there, and she's been appointed by the board. And so, Dave, head on up there and say hi to Ina and offer your services. I've been both general manager of PBS Guam and also of Public Radio Guam. And there was a time back in the late 90s, early, maybe 2001, in working on a report, an annual report, I counted that I had 145 volunteers in this 1 week in March that I had to count. And that also counted the board members who were meeting. But 145 volunteers came through the radio station in that particular week, the second week of March of that year. I was flabbergasted. I didn't realize it, but I was able to keep the doors open and handle that number of people. Drove the staff mad, because we had everything from a 6-year-old Korean girl from St. John's to a Techa who was taking courses at UOG, auditing courses, and she would come into KPRG and sit down at our computer and knock out her lessons, and every now and then go over to a microphone and do a station ID and greet people as they came in the door, so I could go work on some equipment in the back. I mean, that's how much I love volunteers. I do this job for free, but I think they have to pay me. That's kind of what happens in the private sector. And so thank you, Dave, for your comment. And certainly those are volunteer situations, but we'll talk about some education, not just educational television and radio, but the value of education. We have about 10 minutes here before our seventh inning stretch. So this is a topic really suggested by the caller yesterday at this time, who was asking us to remember VOTEC. I'm going to talk about this a bit, and it's sort of to frame the question, because it's a very large question about the value of education. And this is all brought up because of the need to cultivate our own workers from within our own community for what we need. And then of course, we have immigrants, and how are we going to accommodate immigrants in the whole scheme of how we want our community to operate as an economy and as a community. And so I will start with vocational education. There was always a problem with tracking. These were concerns a century ago, and written about extensively by education philosophers a century ago. Also 50 years ago, right here on Guam and throughout the U.S. Education system. Today is the same. Do we want to separate children by apparent ability at the time when they're like 12 or 13 years old? And mainstreaming of children of all abilities, including disabled. We've gotten to that. We don't separate. Remember, Brody School was for special needs children, and then they abolished they mainstreamed students to go in, the special needs students to be in schools all throughout our system. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that these considerations, and it has to do with vocational education, so bear with me. Public school versus private school versus charter schools. We have our public schools, and the budget for the public schools goes down every time students transfer over to charter schools. And public school budget doesn't have to concern itself with the numbers of students from our community who are going to private schools. They don't have to have the building space. They don't have to hire the teachers. They don't have to bus. Well, they do bus them, yes. And they give them books if they want them for the private school students. But they don't have to have teachers and facilities for the students who are in the private schools. But each of those three systems, public, private, and charter, all have an opportunity to offer vocational education. And And in a sense, we do have tracking. We're saying that every student can have a college education if they so choose, if they can do well in school. And that's the college track that has been prevalent over the last, well, since they took Voc Tech High School and turned it into Guam Community College. Nothing wrong with that, except they shouldn't have gotten rid of Voc Tech High School, which was which was in effect a kind of public school that was not in the same mold as the other high schools, GW, JFK. Values education. Whose values are we going to teach? In school, do you teach values in the school or in the home? School, public school, is a socialization tool to make good citizens so that we can all be educated together and to live together. That's a philosophical goal that comes through our public school system from funding, incentives, and also the assurances that we give on the local level in exchange for that considerable amount of funding. But not everyone shares the same philosophical heritage, the same background. So do we ignore the difference in values, or do we seek to transcend the differences? And when we ignore values education, are we preparing our children for the real world, where values are definitely out there, hanging out there for all to see? So the current trend is to just leave these matters up to parents to fill in. And so the public schools wonder why they have behavioral and remedial burdens. Students coming into University of Guam need remedial classes because the applicants are not quite up to college level by the time they graduate. And there's lots of remedial work that's done by teachers in middle school and high school in the public schools. They just don't seem to get a handle on it. And I put this under values education because somewhere along the line we're missing the boat, convincing students that it's important for them to get an education. And it's important for them to think about whether they're going to go to college or whether they want to start a career in the trades. But we also have to remove the stigma of if either you've got a high-paying job or a government job, or you're doing a work where you have to sweat and get dirty, and you're in the every day you're sweaty and dirty. But certainly there are government jobs where you're sweaty and dirty. So I don't know what's going on. Let's go ahead and take a break here. We have about 3 minutes before our show, but now I've got some calls. Let's see if we can get one call in let's get one call in on line 1 before we go to our break. Okay, caller on line 1. Welcome to Tall Tales.
Hi, Daryl.
Yes, Carl.
Yes.
I know your voice. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm doing other things, and as with other talk shows, I normally don't really call in unless something really strikes me. But you were talking about values education.
Yes.
One thing that has been highly pushed in the public schools has been this concept of self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's brought about a fear of having children experience failure, loss, coming in second place, the trauma of losing.
That's really how it's kind of described.
Well, the self-esteem emphasis has been going on for several years now. I think it's been disastrous. And it's resulted in this teaching a generation to be absolutely terrified of being criticized, of having someone say comments that they find offensive in any way. Losing, coming in second place, that's where you have the participation prizes. And it's just been catastrophic. We're having this generation of kids now go out into the world that just get triggered over the slightest comment that stresses them in any way. And really, life is supposed to, it's supposed to teach you to be resilient, to be resourceful, that no matter what life throws at you, there's the saying by Friedrich Nietzsche, whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger.
Carl,
everything in life is supposed to bring that about, toughening up and teaching us to be resourceful and resilient, because we face failure, we face pain, we face loss, we face people that say hurtful things, and if we're not equipped to face those things, we are in deep trouble. And that's what we're coming up with, is a generation of kids that cannot stand reality. You need safe spaces, and So you're talking about values.
Yes,
so this is an example
you're right.
of what happens when theoreticians get a hold of the values concept and run completely off into, off into the field somewhere.
And Carl, this discussion has been going on for 100 years, but only in the last 20 years or so have they accomplished this by saying it's not our problem, but we want everyone to feel included and nurtured, and it's. We have to go to a break here, the seventh inning stretch, but I want to before we take this break, I want to share with you and the audience a quotation I heard Mitch McConnell, the majority leader of the Senate, say in an interview just today. He was relating a country saying before the media today, quote, "There's no education like the second kick of a mule." End quote. Now, we don't have mules around here to kick us, but there should be some way.
On the other side of your break, and we can continue this discussion a little bit.
You are welcome
or
to.
Do you want me
yes.
to hold on, or what would you like me to do?
Let's just hold. Let me have.
Okay, I'll hold.
Be on hold, okay, and then we'll be right back after our seventh inning stretch here on Tall Tales.
Cheers to 80 years. It's our 80th anniversary and the gifts are on us. 80 gift certificates, 8 shopping sprees, 8 staycations, and 1 round-trip flyaway for 2 to Manila. So how do you enter? Calvo's Insurance personal home and auto customers are automatically entered. Non-Calvo's customers may enter by receiving a qualified quote. It's our way of saying thank you for trusting us for the past 80 years. For more details, visit calvos.com/giveaway or call 472-6816. Calvo's Insurance, serving Guam for 80 years.
Yesterday, I talked about the need to put teams on the road to recruit companies to invest in Guam and provide quality jobs and opportunities for yet other businesses. But we only scratched the surface. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, I'm going to give you the blueprint to make it happen.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point.
I think that was an abbreviated version of the song there, Real Joe. I'm pretty much used to that tune.
Yeah, well, we've got Carl holding on the line, so I abbreviated it.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you very much. Let's bring Carl back on. Carl, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Okay, well, yeah, I was just wanting to call in and comment about this concept of values. And it sounds okay, but really the main thing that we need kids to be prepared for is to give them the tools to be productive, to bring value to the marketplace to serve people's needs. They need to be able to read competently. They need to be able to write competently. They need to be able to communicate or speak competently. They need to be able to do basic math competently. And too many times, too many kids are leaving school without these bare essential things.
The social promotions.
Have remedial classes done in the university or even community college.
Well, it's happening with
the first 12 years have failed to do that.
It's called social promotion.
Yeah.
That for social reasons and not for.
The thing is with this concept of self-esteem is that they've done surveys of the children in I don't know how many countries. I think it's like 40 or 50 Western countries. As far as how they're doing on the STEM subjects, the science and the engineering, math, and all this other stuff, the hard sciences, comparing all the countries. And they also did surveys on how these same countries, how the kids feel they're doing. So America came in, I think it was like 27th, which is not that great, for a, one of the most prosperous countries. But the American children felt they were doing fantastic. So they were doing pretty awful, but they felt like they were doing really great.
Right, and because we're so big, because we're so
constantly being told you're great, you're great, you're great, you're wonderful, everything you do is beautiful, but there's no real feedback as to you need to improve this you need to do better at this, you need to knuckle down and produce to improve. So that's what we end up with.
Well, we have been going through this problem has been going on for quite a while. I remember growing up that there were students who just couldn't hack it, and their grades were poor, and they struggled, and they knew that when they grew up, because they didn't apply themselves or they didn't have the mental toughness to keep up with the lessons, that they were going to fall behind and that they were going to be taking menial jobs, or it'd be very difficult to find a job or even to join the service. And they knew it. We knew it. We all knew it. But it had to do with them applying themselves. Some could and some did not. And there were some who were really smart and came from dirt floor poor homes and were rivals with me for the top grades of the class. And so it wasn't background, it was attitude, and it was applying themselves. And we don't have enough of that. Maybe there's more counseling needed. Maybe there's more, especially with a large immigrant population, that we're supposed to be able to count noses and say, these are the problems we are encountering, and so we need to put some of our effort into helping these students catch up, not make them feel good, but show to them that that opportunities are there, the education system is there, and that we have resources to overcome these challenges. We have enough students that we can generalize pretty well, but we don't. But we seem to be thinking that our programs are already so great and they conform to a national standard, and that we're spending our money properly according to the federal program financial accountability office, the one that oversees the spending of federal funds. And as long as we can conform to these program standards, then we're doing as good a job as could be done. But the outputs don't bear it out. Students who apply themselves well do well after school. Public school students, private school students, and charter school students. Ones who don't, they're lost. They finish their time in school, no longer the problem of the education system, and they are just chalked up as being just part of the general population, and it reflects. The graduates are a reflection of the census. It's just what we should expect.
When I grew up, I grew up in a dirt poor family. It was just me, my mom, and my dad. We lived in wood and tin shacks until I was about 16, and we were able to move into a Gura house for a few years. But I was dirt poor, but my dad was an alcoholic, and he insisted that on summers I went out and I chopped weeds, I mowed lawns, I earned some money. He didn't have money to give to me. He said, if you want something, go and earn it. And I finally, when I was 15, I got a job as a janitor, and then I was a warehouseman. That was my summer jobs, and I worked through school. After school, I would go down and do some janitorial work at the old townhouse.
Mm-hmm.
These are menial jobs, but they allowed me to form discipline, to be trained, to have certain attitudes toward people, toward customers, toward my employer. So in that way, they were very valuable. But the problem is that we have a school system that really trivializes the so-called, the menial jobs. And you may have heard of Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs.
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay, well, he hosted a show where he went out into the field, and he would interview and actually participate in these labor jobs, really unique jobs like, birthing cattle,
wow,
just really some wild jobs, good paying, they were really good paying jobs. But Mike Rowe has a foundation that supports skilled work. He said there is a crying need in America for people to be willing to take on and be trained for skilled work. Electricians, plumbers, carpenters, masons, and on and on and on. All these good-paying jobs that. But more and more kids want a position. They want a desk job, and they want to be able to boss people around. They think that's the only job that's worthy of them.
Or they want to work in...
They tend to turn their noses up at these highly skilled, very good-paying jobs, but, they get dirt under your fingernails. And it's demeaning to them because they've got a very high opinion of their worth and their value to society. That's beneath me. I shouldn't be, getting my fingernails dirty. I need to be at behind a desk. So we have this crying need. Millions and millions of these skilled jobs they're crying to be filled. And Mike Rowe has spoken often about this. Bert Johnson, who runs Guam Trades Academy, knows well about it. He's very well aware of Mike Rowe and his foundation. But the consequence of the self-esteem push, this values thing. We've got a generation that thinks they're above it. I shouldn't have to get sweaty and dirty.
Well, it's not confined to just kids coming out of American homes. It also is a characteristic of some of the Micronesian cultures where women go out to the taro fields to do the work. Men go fishing, which is a different kind of work. But the dirty work is done by women. And so you find this here on Guam where women will take the jobs in food service industry and do the cutting of the chicken and the cooking and the washing the pans and appearing at the counter. You don't see their male relatives applying for those same jobs because the women will go to work and bring the money home. They get the skills, they get the exposure to the client base, the customer base, and to the management and co-workers from other cultures, and they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more cosmopolitan than their male counterparts. And they start to become more c significant other or their brothers or fathers, they start to have ambitions that outgrow their insular culture. And so we need to understand all of this in order to foster an interest in the economy that we have and to help citizens and would-be citizens, residents here on Guam, to have a satisfying life, to apply themselves to the jobs that they see in the community, maybe target themselves to jobs to achieve those that level of skill 3 years, 5 years down the road. It can be done because it's being done every day. And we can see it if we're in the individual businesses, but it's not happening fast enough. And there are whole economic sectors where there's nobody who wants to work. And the one that comes to mind immediately is agriculture. If you knew the basics of agriculture and were willing to work hard, you wouldn't have to be a farmer for the rest of your days because of technology and because of the market. If you know the basics, then you can be taught on the job to do hydroponics and to do high-value crops that are in non-traditional settings. There are some immigrants who do work hard in the sun on lands that are available to them, and those are the fresh fruits and vegetables that you can go and you can purchase in the local market. And we need more of that. We were talking.
No, I didn't mean to take up this much of your time. I will, if I could just leave with one last thought.
Sure.
You know, I was fortunate in that despite my upbringing, I was able to study and I got a scholarship and I got through college. But honestly, when I look back at how much of what I applied in college, because I majored in psychology, and it wasn't to me, it wasn't a very transferable skill. So I didn't really apply much of what I learned in college. Most of what I learned on the job, the jobs I had, I actually learned on the job. And I very much appreciate what GCC does. I think they're doing a good job. But the vast majority of skills that people pick up are actually picked up on the job. So I believe the best thing that the government can do to help people get satisfying work is to increase the number of employers competing for labor. That drives the wages up. That opens up opportunities because of on-the-job training, new skills. You can rise to new levels of skills training on especially if you've got a hot job market and employers are they're bidding up wages because there's a limited labor pool, and they need warm bodies to fill spaces. And if there's a high turnover, they pay a price for that. So that, I think, is the best thing you can do, is provide the economic conditions to draw in investment capital, draw in new businesses, and increase the bidders for labor. And I think that will solve a lot of problems. And unfortunately, I think we look to government too often when government really needs to draw in private companies, more and more bidders for labor. Anyway, I'll let that be all. I've kind of stayed on here a lot longer than I thought it would. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Carl, for your comments. I'm going to continue on that thread for a moment here.
All right. I'll listen off the air.
Okay. Thanks again, Carl. So Carl's last point was about the role of on-the-job training as far as the overall education plan on Guam. On-the-job training is very specific to the task that the employer wants a worker to do. And if they need to train the worker, generally they're not being paid as if they were already skilled. But they learn as they go along. And there's much to be said about this. However, here on Guam, our experience has been that as more and more investment in our tourism plant has sprung up, we have lots of jobs for the people who have come in and people who grew up and want to go into these jobs. But it's not been considered a high status job, and so many of our people have rejected this and gone on, decided to emigrate because they were not getting management jobs. They were not getting high status jobs. And so, but that is a very important part of the overall education plan on Guam. And we'll continue with this in just a few minutes. This is our break here for our
the home stretch.
The home stretch. There we go. I need to copy these metaphors down, and because we are coming up on to about 11 minutes before 6 o'clock here on Tall Tales for a Wednesday. So let's take this short break, and we'll be right back with more Tall Tales.
Are you not getting paid what you're worth? Or not reaching your full potential at your job? If you're pioneering, adventurous, competitive, love talking to people, and want to earn $100,000 per year, sell cars on U.S. military bases with Military Auto Source. Start on Guam, stay on Guam, or move to Japan or Korea. To see if you qualify, visit MASEastasiarecruiting.com. Military Auto Source, helping you reach your full potential.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
And this is the point where we are relying on Jack Haddock to hit make sure he gets the game-winning home run to bring us all into a good time following the game. Well, you know, it's more than a game here, and I know that he's got his hands full with more than a game. We use these sports metaphors, but it's a pretty serious matter here on Guam for improving our community to the point where we can say we've done our job, preparing this community for our children and to have ourselves a satisfying life. Carl brought up a really good point about on-the-job training, and every company that does hire does on-the-job training. Make sure that those employees are good, and if they're not, there's a penalty, and that is they don't stay. They don't keep them. They just get rid of them. And if they want to come back because they've learned their lesson, sure, they can come back. There's plenty of room for second chances around here, but you got to kind of clean up your act. If you haven't been prepared to be a good employee, then there's time to learn. And so the question really is, how do you optimize resources devoted to education? There's not time to get into this now, but Senator Klitzkie's bill, Every Child Deserves an Adequate Education, became Public Law 28-45. And that, you heard me yesterday say that it was I have differences with him about means to the end. And I told him this at the time. I'm glad the bill passed because there was a lot about accountability. If you really want to know how Bob Klitzkie's mind works, read Public Law 28-45, and you'll have a really good idea because he drafted that. And he walked it through to his colleagues, got co-sponsorships, got the votes, and ran it past ad loop over the objections, and despite technical corrections that needed to be made. But that Public Law 28-45 is an interesting read if you really want to understand Bob Klitzkie. But my disagreement with him was it focused on inputs and not about results. That we would hold educational administrators responsible for ensuring that the inputs were there. The air conditioning, the number of chairs in the room, the number of tables, the number of books, number of students per teacher, and the lunches and all the stuff that goes into a modern American school experience. But nothing said about what the outcomes should be. And so, you know, we've had this change of educational philosophy or method every several seasons around here, it seems. The latest one's Common Core. Now they're talking about adopting a Singapore example. And, you know, God bless them. I hope they succeed. Because certainly they're being paid to do it, and they should know, since they think about this stuff every day in every way. But we in the community are left with the results, whether they're failed or successful. The results come back for us to say, this is what we have, have produced with our tax money and by hiring these particular people to do education for us in our name. And also, you know, the educators don't even agree on the philosophy of education. Teachers' colleges fall into one of two different groups. And educare and educere are both Latin foundation words for the word education. But they mean something totally different. Educare is to bring up, or to rise, or to nourish the child. Educere means to lead out, to draw out, to bring from. That a child has innate intelligence and power to develop, and needs to be given scope for it to develop, for the child to develop, to lead out into the light. And teachers don't agree. You go to any school and you'll find one says, no, I got to pour all this knowledge into the kids' heads. And sometimes they just don't want me to pour it in. And the next teacher will say, I'm showing the child how to approach understanding. A completely different viewpoint on the same process. And when teachers can't agree, how do we expect administrators or the community at large to agree? Now, I haven't posed a solution to this in the course of the show. It's a really large topic, but something for you to think about as you consider education, public education, education for our workforce, H-2B workers needed over the last 50 years, 60 years. Certainly back when the bases were being built, we didn't have enough workers to build the bases or to staff the mess halls and swab floors and whatnot. We just didn't have enough people. Now we do, but we haven't caught up with producing those workers within our own community to have satisfying jobs right here on Guam. And so we'll leave it at that. Come back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Don't forget Ray Gibson at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. And he'll be here, and I'll be back tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock with more Tall Tales. Have a good evening, everyone.